Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's episode, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, as I've been discussing for the past several weeks now, the Russians have made a concerted effort to destroy Ukrainian forces in the Kursk pocket. The Kursk operation by Ukrainian forces have ended in an unmitigated disaster for Ukrainian troops. You can see photographs here of Ukrainian soldiers consoling each other as they withdraw, as they evict themselves, and the Russians evict Ukrainian forces from the Kursk oblast. We have seen dozens of Ukrainian armored vehicles, tanks, MRAPs, infantry transport vehicles that have been destroyed along the R200 highway into Kursk oblast. And actually, the P100 highway. My apologies. The Russians apparently were allowing the Ukrainian forces to walk out of Kursk. Several dozen Ukrainian vehicles attempted transport towards the Ukrainian lines, towards the Ukrainian border, and many of those have been destroyed by Russian fiber optic capable drones. We have seen the Russians parading and capturing a number of Western armored fighting vehicles, including Bradleys and Stryker armored transport vehicles as well. Now, the question is what is going to happen next? Now, as we speak, we have heard reports that the Russians are amassing tens of thousands of troops, both to the northwest and south of Sumy. And it is possible that we could see, as we head into spring and summer, a general Russian offensive in the direction of Sumy. Now, what happened in Kursk is still being digested by both the Ukrainian military and more so the Ukrainian political apparatus. Again, unmitigated disaster. We now have the former president of the Ukraine, Poroshenko, calling Zelensky a dictator. A dictator. So we can see the fracture in Ukrainian society continue to widen as this very unpopular conflict becomes even more so. And as I create this content, the Ukrainian Security Service is still apprehending Ukrainian males from the street and indenturing them into military service without their consent. And that continues as it has for several months, if not longer. And we anticipate that will continue as, again, the general male population of the Ukraine simply does not want to go to the front lines and risk being killed for a cause that they may believe in, but the end game they believe is going to be defeat. That eventually going to the front lines and dying on the front lines is fruitless. And as we speak, it's very possible that the United States could acknowledge Crimea, Sevastopol, as being part of the Russian Federation. Now the question is what other areas will the United States acknowledge as being part of the Russian Federation? Difficult to say at this point. But again, the Russians are not going to agree to a ceasefire, especially since they have the Ukrainian military on the ropes and with their war goals and war aims that have not yet been completed. Now the question is if the Russians launch this offensive towards Sumy, and if the Russians launch a general offensive later in the summer against Kharkov, we have to ask, additionally, what are the continued Russian war goals? Will Odessa come into play as being one of the final objectives of the Russian military? And it's difficult to see this conflict coming to a conclusion, whether there is a pause followed by additional conflict, without Odessa eventually falling under Russian control. Odessa is incredibly important to the Russian Federation, as is the Crimea, as are those oblasts that have been taken by the Russian Federation either completely or partially as the conflict continues. But again, going back to Kursk, just a devastating defeat for the Ukrainian military, a defeat that cost the Ukrainian military huge amounts of resources, both in terms of troops, in terms of equipment, and then the question is, what was gained? What was gained? And then compounding that, you have to ask the question, as that operation was launched, what was the war goal? What was the Ukrainian state, what was Volodymyr Zelensky thinking when he decided to invade the Russian Federation? If you were to ask any military analyst on the planet prior to Zelensky launching this operation, they probably would tell you it's insanity. Those forces could have been utilized on other areas of the front line, but they weren't. They were used to take a small border town and hold what is essentially sunflower and potato fields for about a year as Russian forces continued to degrade and destroy those Ukrainian units that had entered Russian territory. Now, this is going to have ramifications. This is not over with yet. This unmitigated disaster is not over and will probably, in all probability, will reach Kiev in some way. It has to. Then the question will be, if Zelensky is no longer popular enough to be president, will he step down? Will he remove himself from office? And the answer to that right now, undeniably, is it's looking like he won't. He has suspended the Constitution. He has suspended the Russian Orthodox Church. And all signs, again, as we speak, the prior president of Ukraine is calling him a dictator. So that's it for today. Again, as always, thanks for joining us. More to come very, very soon. Good day.